Okay, we're ready at 6 o'clock. Everybody had their mics turned on and their buttons ready? Lots of questions. All right, and welcome to the September 7th regular city council meeting. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Cochran, absent. Councilmember Gonzalez, absent. Councilmember Hamrick,
Here.
Councilmember Jaquez,
Present.
Councilmember Meisner,
Here.
Councilmember Turner, absent. Mayor Pro Tem Smith,
Here.
Mayor Troutman.
Here. Could I have Alicia Swearingen up to the microphone? She's with the Royal Gorge Vineyard Church. Would you please rise for the invocation?
Would you bow your heads with me? Heavenly Father, we just take a moment to acknowledge you and thank you for all you've done. We're so grateful for the city of Canyon City and for all those who faithfully sacrifice their time and talent and efforts to serve you on behalf of our city. And we ask now for you to come and impart your wisdom, and it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Pledge of allegiance. Thank you. I have several requests that we'll get into later that if you're here for the Humane Society, we'll be talking about that in our consent agenda if there's any questions, so we'll hold off on that. At this time, is there any, well, we have, let's do these two right here. We have George Story. Would you like to step up to the microphone? And if you would like to speak to council, fill one of these out, please, so we know who you are. And we will go ahead and set the timer. And it is 3 minutes. That's everybody's deal. And that's right there in front of you. So go ahead, Mr. Story.
Ladies and gentlemen, we all have the right to vote in this election coming up. This will be a trial running very shortly. The big one's coming up. Presidential elections coming up. We have the right to vote Democratic, Republican, and when you get in that booth, I have been known to vote on both sides. I'm going to vote for whoever I think is going to represent me the best. It's our right as Americans to vote. You'll never take that right against me. Thanks for letting me speak. And last but not least, USA, USA,
Okay.
USA.
Thank you, George.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, George. Okay, we have George. No, that's George. Sorry. We have Mark Melvin. Mark, would you come up? You're going to talk about the speed limit in residential. So would you give us your name and address, please?
Yes, sir. Mark Melvin, 604 Fay Avenue, sir.
Okay, go right ahead.
All right. Thank you, council members, for allowing me to speak. I'm requesting that the speed limit on several other residential areas be lowered. I have noticed, like the map I gave each council member, Fay Avenue, it's posted as 30. However, 5th, alongside it, that goes south to north and north to south, is posted 25. Fay Avenue, anytime throughout the year, has 15 to 20 children on that street. I have almost been hit by individuals doing 30+ miles an hour. I am requesting the council to please lower that speed limit to at least 25. There's a paper that I gave y'all. It states a vehicle traveling at 20 miles an hour, 90% of people struck will survive. 30 miles an hour, 50% will die. 40 miles per hour, 90% will die. My children depend on this. Thank you.
Thank you. On the speed limit, is that something, would you, just a minute, please. Asking our administrator and our attorney, is that something that's in the purview of our chief of police, that we would discuss that with them, or are they set statutorily, or what can you tell us on that?
We can speak with the chief of police and our engineering department and do a speed study.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, that's a joint study between the police department and the city engineer.
Actually, Adam, do you want to talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so what, the engineering department does the speed study, makes a recommendation for the speed change, and then PD follows up with enforcement on that.
Thank you.
Do you know a time, if we were to instigate it?
And we're doing one next week for Griffin Avenue, so probably within a month or so we can.
How long do they last?
It just takes about a week to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank
So,
Okay, go
so
ahead.
Adam, part of that speed study, is that justifying a speed reduction? Or are you just saying it follows up with?
Yes, it's
Enforcement.
examining both speed reduction, speed increase, basically looking at all the background information, types of vehicles, types of day, peak hours, all that sort of data. We incorporate all that. We take a look at the roadside conditions, width of the roadway, numbers of driveways, that sort of thing. Yep.
Okay. And I also was going to say that I've gotten a complaint from somebody else on Fay in this area with cars speeding, and not just speeding, but at nighttime, I guess kind of drag cars with really loud mufflers, and so it's also a noise nuisance, and so they really wanted to see some more enforcement in that as well. So please bring that up when you guys
Mr. Mayor.
talk.
Yes, go ahead.
Absolutely. From an enforcement standpoint, I'll work with the police department on that as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that section of Fay also has a blind curve. The east side of Fay has a blind curve, and I was reviewing the Colorado Revised Statute, what was it, 42-4-1101. Blind curves, I believe, are posted 20, as per the Colorado Revised Statute.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Question.
Yes, sir.
It's not for him, but more for Adam. Do you post any kind of memo in terms of all that information that you gather for that speed study?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
We do.
Yeah, I'd like to see just how all that falls together.
Thank you. Those are all the open ones that we don't have within the agenda at this time. Then, are there any announcement from council? Yes, ma'am.
I guess I do have an announcement. I just wanted to let the council members know, if you haven't heard already, that Canyon City was selected for a national program called Built for Zero. And Built for Zero is about significant reduction in homelessness and programs for supporting that. It was submitted by Dee Dee Clement from Loaves and Fishes and Autumn Deaver at UCOG. And there'll be a training session in Denver at the end of October. And I am going to be going to that training session as well to help learn about this national program that we've qualified for Built for Zero. And Canyon City also received a scholarship to pay for that as well.
Great, thank you. Well, then we have general government meeting Wednesday, and being discussed will be,
It'll be riverfront zoning, so it'll be a joint meeting between City Council and Planning Commission.
that'd be interesting, if any, go ahead. Are you waving your hands for some reason? Joint. This is Colorado, right? Okay, but anyway, you, if you're in the audience and you would like to come to that, we really sincerely want your input, because what goes on at the city, city owns some property there, but what would go on this side of the riverfront, we're interested in your input. And please, if you have time, come down. It's at 6 o'clock. It's right here. And you'll see the schematics and some ideas that we had. And a lot of times I get told that they've gone to another town to the west of us, Salida, the smoke-filled Salida, and how great they've enjoyed the river. And so we would like to have our own personal type of river experience on property there. So if you have time, come on out. We'd really appreciate your support. Anything else? Okay. My glasses here. I then ask our acting city administrator to review the agenda and the consent agenda at this time.
All right. For the consent agenda, 7A is the approval minutes for the regular city council meetings on May 20th, June 17th, July 15th, and September 16th, as well as the special city council meetings on June 17th, the General Government 2 meeting on June 5th and September 11th, and the Vision Committee meetings on July 17th and September 18th. 7B is a small update to the Human Resources job description. 7C changes, change of position to include sales and use tax technician from a regular accounting technician position. 7D awards bid 4119 for the pedestrian bridge repairs to TMI Coatings of Minnesota, not to exceed $112,376. 7E awards bid 5119 for alley reconstruction to Avalanche Excavating in an amount not to exceed $184,565.70. 7F authorizes the acting city administrator to sign an amendment to the professional services contract for the Educational Paleontology Liaison and the Canyon City Museum. 7G authorizes the acting city administrator to sign the annual GIS planning contract in the amount of $8,100. 7H authorizes the mayor to sign the Fremont Humane Society county contract for 2020. And 7I is to receive and file a list of bills.
Okay. Are there any additions, corrections, or discussions? Mr. Meisner?
One, if we have a lot of discussion and input on the Fremont County item H, I would suggest maybe we move it to,
How about 9A? I've already written that down, by the way.
7A. 8A, which would put it still in the same sequence, but it would put it before 9.
It could, well, yeah, I would rather it be 9A if you don't mind, because we have a lengthy, we don't have a very lengthy discussion, and we have staff here to answer
Okay.
questions regarding
You're the
the
mayor.
St. Scholastica. And I believe the discussion may go, judging from the number of people who would like to speak, that may go long. I think they would appreciate it.
So we're going to do 9,
Let's do 9A.
actually 9C.
Okay, point 9, something after 9, St.
There you go.
Scholastica. Okay? I think that'd be better. Any other comments, discussions, Mr. Meisner?
Item B, the human resources job description. We're talking about going from a 77 to an 80.
And that was previously approved as Resolution 2 earlier this year. It was something that had not been updated on the job description. So when we brought it before council earlier last month, it was an oversight. So we're just correcting it to match Resolution 2 from which was approved earlier this year.
The resolution was for 80 or 77?
It was for 80. Yes.
Item C, the sales tax use technician. I notice your minimum experience seems to be 4 years. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Assuming, we're anticipating filling that position now?
We are. So our current sales and use tax technician, actually just account technician, is moving to the purchasing position. So it'll be it's going to be a vacancy that we need to fill.
It just seems like, is 4 years practical?
Well, we've got Tammy Nordyke, our finance director. We'll have her come up and talk to
I
the
just get concerned about that
experience.
much experience for that position.
Right. When I created that job description, just so we were able to actually hire for a sales tax position versus just saying a senior accounting technician, I looked at other governmental positions that were similar, and that was what the consensus was asking for. Also, we do have in there that a combination of education and experience can substitute. I think that is listed in there. We're just hoping by actually saying that it's the sales and use tax technician position, that we have people applying that know what they're getting into versus just saying you're their senior accounting technician and say you can do this, 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 or this.
Okay.
We just wanted a little more defined.
Well, if that's, I mean, if you're comfortable with the 4 years, then who am I?
I think we were fortunate because there was an individual that did something similar to that, but was with us a long time. And so now we're looking at a skill level that might not be out there, but, you know, it's a mixture of both, so, what I read anyway. Okay? Mr. Meisner?
Item E, which is the alley reconstruction. We're talking about essentially awarding the bid roughly $30,000 over the budget.
Here's where you chime in there, Mr. Lancaster.
The budget, I believe, is 200,000 for that.
It says the estimate for this work was 159, or is that not the budgeted amount? Last.
No, that estimate's different than a budgeted amount.
Oh,
Yeah.
so we're good budget-wise. That's.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we based our estimate on, so you may recall that Avalanche has been doing these projects the last couple of years. Early this year, you guys authorized an extension of his existing pricing plus an increase, and that still was not enough for him.
Right.
So that's where the estimate came from. So then we put it back out to bid. So, but budget, we're fine.
Item F, in terms of the paleontology liaison, that's a wash. Is that correct? Or not?
It's grant paid for. Yeah.
But the 30,000 that we're authorizing is getting washed with a grant.
Lisa, would you like to address that? I know you're in the audience. Washing is part of the job description, too.
The fossils?
Sorry, go ahead.
That's a duck joke.
I'd say.
It was a grant that we received from BLM, and it is basically a wash.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, any questions? Thank you, Lisa. Also would like to add that the improvements in the alleyways will be on the north side between Macon and Main Street and the 300 and 400 blocks of our town. And Adam, do you have an idea when they may start?
You know, award will be tomorrow, you know, tonight, hopefully, and then hopefully within a couple of weeks they'll get started.
Okay, so,
How much more we get left?
what,
How many more are we getting left?
we've got quite a few alleys left, don't we?
Yeah, we have at least three more that are priority, yeah,
Right.
in the downtown area, and
Bring-
then we'll discuss with you guys where we want to go from there.
Okay.
Beach?
No,
Is that the area where we had the fire, the Bacon building here a while back, that alleyway there?
Right next door.
No,
It's not?
that alley's gravel. This is for the reconstruction of concrete alleys on the
Oh,
north
okay.
side, yeah.
on the north side. Ms. Smith?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda and the agenda with the following amendments to change 9 to 9.1 and item H to 9.2. So instead of doing A and B, we'll do 9.1 and 9.2. So we follow the
Whatever.
Okay,
Second.
second. And motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on that? None? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Hemrick,
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez,
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Aye.
I wanted to add, since I have the mic, I wanted to add that Eric Damaros passed away. He was our mayor of Canyon City from 69 to 74. Eric was a very strong supporter of our community, a longtime businessman, well-respected in the community. He was also on city council. He was mayor. He was also president of the Chamber of Commerce. And I'd like to send out our condolences to Pat and the whole family. Pat is his wife, to the whole family on his passing about 2 weeks ago. And that's Eric Damaros. Some of you probably, old-timers probably remember him in his Frederickson Brown Insurance that was here in town. But he was a real strong supporter of Canyon City and was always involved, and we really appreciate that. And I'd like to send our condolences out to Pat. So, thank you. All right, at this time, could we have the city administrator's report, Acting Administrator Stevens?
Yes, sir. I'm just going to go through the highlights. Ivy Morris has joined the city as the Human Resources Director. Today was her first day. Very excited to have her on board. She joins us from the Gazette-Telegraph. Just want to give out some employee kudos. Mason Morgan passed his Class A water treatment licensure. James Arsenault passed his Class 2 distribution operating exam, both in the water departments. Lots of hard work there. And then thank you to the water distribution crew that spent the night on October 1st and into the morning October 2nd fixing the water main break at 10th and Oak. That was a big break and took a lot of work to get that back operational. So just want to say thank you to that crew. And then we had the Sons and Daughters of Italy send their thanks. That's attached to this memo. Thanking us for the 7th Annual Italian Festival and the work that was happened from the city. Special gratitude going to Denise, Cindy, Rex, and the Parks employees for their great work. Item 3, we have some meeting conflicts coming up, and part of that's because we moved our committee meetings to 6 o'clock, and there's some conflicts there with the Planning Commission meetings. So the October 23rd meeting that's coming up, we would recommend moving that to October 22nd. The presenter that we have from the Golden Age Center is available that day, and that with council's approval, that would be our recommendation. We also have a meeting coming up on November 20th where there is also a conflict between the Vision meeting and the Planning Commission.
Do you have a proposed reschedule on that date, or should we discuss that later?
We don't have a proposed reschedule for that, but we can come forward with something at the next meeting.
Okay, very good.
So we're moving the 23rd to the 22nd?
To the 22nd, so Wednesday to a Tuesday.
Is it still going to be at 6?
It'll still be at 6, yes, sir. Item number 4, the Highway 50 Access Control Plan. Our next stakeholder meeting is October 17th, and we have moved that meeting at council's request from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So that council members can come and ask questions prior to the open house meeting. That open house meeting is going to happen November 6th from 5 to 7, and that will be in place of the general government meeting. When we put this original contract out, we tried to match some of the dates with some of the existing committee meetings. Stormwater capital improvement projects. We'd like to request a special city council meeting to discuss upcoming stormwater projects. Our suggestion there would be October 30th at 6 p.m. Well, it takes 3 to call a special meeting, so.
I call it special meeting. I know that there's a number of citizens that are very worried that we had said that we would start construction on stormwater at the end of October, and it's very disappointing that the bids came in so high or the estimates were way too low for the budgeting. And they need some answers, and they need to have some input given.
What's the intent of that meeting?
Adam, do you want to talk a little bit about that, please?
Sure. So there's 2 parallel things that are happening. One, we just opened up bids for the Dawson Ranch project, came in way over bid. And also we're hearing from Atkins, who is the designer for the other 2 projects east of town, that they're anticipating costs will be inflated as well. So we just needed kind of a discussion. So we have full design at Dawson with things out to bid already. And we're at 10 to 30% design for the WPA and Rhodes Avenue. And so it's decision time on some of those things based on what we're hearing on costs.
So you're saying the Rhodes Avenue is also going to be inflated a lot more than we anticipated? Because
Yes.
there's a huge difference between the $975,000 anticipated estimate and the $1.7 million that came in.
That's right. Yep.
What numbers are you looking at for roads?
That's what we're going to have the meeting for to discuss. I don't have the numbers with me tonight. But.
Why do you think we were so under budgeted?
It's a matter. Well, I mean, again, that, as I explained, we're gonna bring you guys some data and some information that we have. Just off the top of my head, one of the reasons we're seeing across the whole Front Range is lack of equipment and labor everywhere. So that's impacting some of it. Some of it may be timing. So anyway, that's the discussion we need to have, and we'll bring more of those details to you then.
Okay, I have one person in favor. I'll need two more.
So I second that meeting call.
I guess.
Well, Jim, you have mentioned that we need to be really cognizant of how we spend that $8 million. I mean, that is a precious few drops of money compared to our overall problem, and we need to make sure we can spend as much of it as efficiently as we can, instead of all those exorbitant costs. Ryan, would we have information by then to know about the storm water truck that could potentially clean out some of the pipes, and if there is a need for it, and maybe the possibilities of that being a partial
I think
solution?
we could probably talk a little bit about that at that meeting. Absolutely.
Have we been doing some testing around town?
We have not done any additional testing. We can schedule some additional demos. We have received some more quotes. They're all right in that same ballpark, around $500,000.
Okay, I think if it's possible to have demos done before then, it might help us in some of that decision-making process on how to spend the stormwater money and looking forward.
We're going to have part of that discussion when we discuss water and stormwater rates later this month as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you talking about spending the special $8 million for the truck?
No, the truck's about 500,000.
But the truck would have, yeah, and that'll be part of the discussion when we talk about stormwater rates, because a truck purchase and what it takes to run the truck couldn't come out of the COP
Right.
dollars. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it could, and that's why we need to do the tests around town on the pipes to see if there is a need for that.
We can save it for the meeting, but you need to find the money first. It's not there. Because we spent it.
Well, that's part of the stormwater meeting, Jim, where we're talking about rates and water.
Okay, it sounds like, Mr. Stevens, that I have a reluctant 3. And so we can schedule, that's not Halloween, is it?
No, that's the day before.
Oh, good. That'd be
Bring the
scary.
candy.
All right, so then we're on for 6 o'clock.
Yep.
October the 30th. That's pre-Halloween. And we'll talk about stormwater. And I think the necessary players that have come in prior should be asked to come here. Okay? Mr. Meisner, did you have anything more to add? Or do you just leave this on permanently?
Well, when he's done, I got some questions.
Okay. Item 9, we've got the first meeting with contractors to discuss moving to the 2018 building code. That is set for October 29th from 2 to 4. We have the Department of Local Affairs will be here tomorrow to discuss the Colorado Main Street program. That's going to take place at the Fremont Center for the Arts at 5:30. And then finally, it's not in the report, but we have scheduled community agency funding. That's going to be all day on October 18th. And if you have any questions.
Mr. Meisner?
On item number 4, I thought at the last meeting I was there, the representatives from DOT, I thought made a remark about limiting access long-term for the territorial facility as coming through first. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
Somebody-
Not closing their access on US 50, but altering it in a way that First Street, as First Street's being used today, would be more formalized.
So the plan wouldn't be to limit the current entrance off of,
Yes, there would be some movement restriction there, yes.
But that's not something that's going to happen when this plan is adopted. That's something that's going to happen over time.
Yeah, and that was just what was discussed with first round of drafts. So that's why we have one more meeting plus the open house.
has anybody talked to the facility?
Not that I know of yet, nope.
Because that's a massive problem based upon, not my interpretation, but management of the facility. And it's not an employee issue, it's a security issue.
And that's been noted to them, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Are you continuing?
If I can.
Yes, you go right ahead.
An item number 9, where you're talking about this meeting, do you have any contractors lined up for that meeting?
We've sent out notifications, and we have follow-up scheduled as well. We don't have anybody specifically signed up for it.
Can I just pipe in really quick?
Yes, please.
Because I have a question on that same one as well.
Go right ahead.
At that meeting, hopefully, we can get some contractors there, but it might also be a good idea to have county there. I know they wanted to try and discuss 2018 together, so we could
Yeah,
be in
we've
unison.
invited the county, and the fire district is helping us host.
Okay, good. And can we also ask the question about a regional code or regional building department, if there is still an interest in pursuing that concept
From the county?
from the county and the contractors?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Arquez?
Item number 8, I don't remember, I know there was a discussion of looking at additional parking in the downtown area. My thing is going to be this: when we bring that back, what I would request that they have is the length of this lease agreement, the purpose for this lease agreement with regards to, we've already got places where we said we're going to have parking, and now we're going to add more parking. I just can't see where there's the need for additional parking with regards to spending more money of the city's money. Okay, so my question is going to be, when that comes, is I really want to see a lot of statistics that justifies why we're going to look at additional downtown parking, which won't be permanent in a sense, okay, when we have everything that we've already done. So that's going to be my concern, because I'm looking at it this way. We're going to be spending more of the taxpayers' money, not for a permanent thing, but for a temporary thing. And my questions will also be related to that. Is there going to be a lease agreement that's going to be able to be canceled at any time with the property owners? Do we have an option for renegotiating that lease? So I'm going to want a real good detailed explanation for that lease agreement when it comes back up.
Well, keep that in mind when we put together the memo.
Another just quick comment on that while we're on that same subject. So, Councilman Hawkes, I know that the downtown merchants are desperate for downtown parking, and it's not, and in particular, long-term parking, especially for those who have apartments downtown, because we're trying to make shopping a little bit easier and convenient for our citizens, and so we have 3-hour parking at a number of spots, but the apartment residents need a place where they can park all day and all night without interfering with our shoppers or our businesses.
And I understand that. I'm not saying I'm against it, but what I'm saying is you're going to have to give me some good statistics to show why we're going to spend more money of the taxpayers for not permanent parking, just temporary parking in a sense. And that, so it's not going to really take away from what we got. We got the property across from Doritos that we have. We've got the property down where we bought Constantino's. So I need some good justification for it. I'm not against it as long as it can be justified. I understand what downtown is, okay? I understand that. The thing that we need to look at also is this. Downtown gets busy until 5 o'clock. After 5 o'clock, folks, it's dead, okay? So that's what I'm talking about, justification for acquiring more property with regard to that. And I know there's people that have apartments and rent that, okay? I understand that. In fact, my daughter and her son, my son-in-law, just coming back to Kansas City from Sterling, and they're going to be renting an apartment until they can get back in their home in the downtown area. So I understand that.
So that's also street sweeping and snow removal as a part of that discussion.
I understand that.
And then, Ryan, I wanted to add as well, we have changed 3-hour parking on South 7th Street, south of Main Street, at request of business owners.
That's correct.
And I've received additional complaints from those on 5th Street, around where the library is, that we took down the 3-hour parking, and now there's apartment residents that are parking there all day long in front of the library. And the library parking lot is already really small. We need to keep that available to the patrons and to the business owners there. So I'd like us to take a look at that too and see if that might be another spot where we might need to consider 3-hour parking.
North of Main Street?
North of
Yep.
Main Street, yes.
Okay, we'll take a look at
Okay,
that.
all that will come up at a different session.
Yep.
Okay? So, Mr. Meisner?
I think he missed items 6 through 9, but.
He's trying to get through it.
Well, I know, but still, we're talking about $3,000 that we're going to do for the park?
Yeah, so $3,000, that's in the 2020 budget, and that, if you'd like to take that out, we can take that, discuss that at the budget hearing.
Okay.
Well, I have a question on that too. Is Fremont County contributing any funds towards that? Because that's technically a county park.
I would have to ask, but I can confirm that for you.
Yeah, I would prefer to find that out before I make that approval.
I mean, spending $3,000, I realize it's a nice entity for the park, but that's a recreation and a county project.
Yeah, that's not a city project.
It's not a city project, but this is something that we have done in the past as well, so it's kind of,
Always time for change.
that's up to the council.
Okay, let's allow him to continue on, or we'll be discussing this at length. Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
I'm done unless there are any other
You're done?
questions. Yep.
Oh,
Well, Mayor, I'm sorry, but I do have questions because we used to do this with Ryan one-on-one where we could spend like an hour at length. We decided we needed to have it together. And this is our opportunity to ask questions and get the input from other council members so we know how we can move forward together.
right ahead.
And the first thing I want to do is give an additional thank you to the employees from the water department who did work all through the night to fix that water main.
Where are we talking about?
Yeah, number 2 we did talk about. I just want to give additional thanks. As city council personally, we brought some donuts down to those employees late into the night, and there was no grumbling from them. They had really good attitudes while they were, knee-deep in water, literally gushing, and that they really cared about serving Canyon City and taking care of them and making sure they got water as soon as they could. I have a question about the process for the special event liquor permits, how we needed to update that process. And I was wondering if we could also maybe look at doing a flow chart for those who are getting the permit. I've heard from a number of sources that it's very confusing and hard to know how to get started, and it's lengthy to go through the permitting process for a liquor license, and if maybe there was a flow chart or something that might help in that process.
So knowing which liquor license to,
Yeah, well, for the public, for special events.
for special events?
For special
Okay.
events in particular. I've heard that it can be a real pain to get through the process to do that. It might be nice if we could find ways to make that a little bit easier for our nonprofits to go through that.
Mayor, there are, just so you're aware, there are 2 different forms they have to do. One is liquor, 1 page.
Mhm.
One is special event, when they use the street, that one is more in-depth. So there are 2 different parts to it. I'm not sure which part.
I think it's the
you're talking
special event part
about. Well, one's a liquor permit.
mhm,
and then
for
one
the
is
liquor.
Just, okay, because it's just a 1-page form.
I don't know, I've just heard that it was tough to get through. I don't know if they were just anxiety getting through it or having to come back over and over again because it wasn't just right or something, I don't know.
Yep.
Well, if it's a special event, that requires all the signatures.
Yeah.
Not on all parts, depending on where it's at.
Yep. So maybe you and I can discuss afterwards a little bit more details about that.
Right, and I might bring in the party itself who made that recommendation. They would have the best input to give.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's all I have.
Thank you. Okay. No further comment. Did you like to comment, or are you just standing there for a reason, or?
No, he's ready for his face.
What?
I would just like to ask Mr. Stevens to invite the design professionals to the 2018
Building
code
code.
review, not just contractors.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. George. No, come up to the microphone.
I just have a good, simple question for you, ladies and gentlemen. With all this construction going on in town, where are the local jobs? I mean, I'd like to spend my money on Main Street if I had much. I mean, just
That would be
ballpark.
George, that would be up to the contractors. We put them out for bid, and there are small contractors that are doing it, so we assume or hope that they are hiring locally, but that's up to the contractor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to open a public hearing at this time. This is number 9 on your agenda. It's the St. Scholastica property at 615 Pike Avenue. It's St. Scholastica minor subdivision. Consideration adoption by title only of Resolution 23, Series 2019, entitled, "A Resolution of the City of Canyon City, Colorado, authorizing a limited exception at the city's development standards pursuant to Section 4.18 of the city's subdivision and development regulations." Mr. Stevens, would you like to address it, or would we have Patrick and
We'll have Patrick, the city planner.
city planner? Would you mind? Go right ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Davis. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. This evening's public hearing concerns a request to subdivide the property at 615 Pike Avenue under the name Scholastica Minor Subdivision. The subject property is a 7.41 acre parcel located at the northeast corner of North 6th Street and Pike Avenue. Property is known within Canyon City as the St. Scholastica Campus, a private parochial school which had an all-female student enrollment. There are multiple buildings on site which date to different periods. The oldest is known as Big Red and was constructed in 1897. The maintenance building was finished in 1950, and the existing dormitory building opened in 1961. The principal classroom building was finished in 1970, and the final addition to the site was the library and chapel building, which opened in 1983. The site operated as a school until 2003. In 2005, the site was again opened as a juvenile detention facility, but was shut down after only 18 months of operation. Since 2007, the site has stood vacant and unmaintained. This period of lack of maintenance has taken its toll on a number of the buildings on site, some of which have already been demolished. Council members may recall that earlier this summer, a rezoning application came before you to create the Scholastica Planned Development District. Staff has found that the conditions concerning the rezoning have been satisfied and will very soon be recorded. The subdivision request was processed under the zoning created with the Scholastica PDD in anticipation of its recordation. The applicant has proposed to not only subdivide the property based on planning areas within the PDD approval, but to the final configuration of the lots anticipated in the full PDD itself. This means that in Planning Area 1, the single-family residential portion of the site, the proposed subdivision will create 13 lots, all with vehicular access coming from a privately owned and maintained alley. All 13 lots come with accessory dwelling units, should future lot owners seek to construct both. This has the potential for 26 total dwelling units on 13 lots, or, given the average lot size of 6,476 square feet, a density of approximately 13 dwelling units per acre. Lot sizes within this planning area will range from a high of 7,650 square feet to a low of 5,900 square feet. The larger lots all face north and front Floral Avenue. The smaller lots face south and orient their fronts to a common area contained within Planning Area 2. To provide pedestrian access for the lots fronting Floral Avenue, the applicant has proposed to create a tract which will contain a trail link between the private alley and the common area to the south. All of this is consistent with the approved PDD zoning. Planning Area 2 represents the non-residential portion of the Scholastica PDD. The largest portion of this planning area is intended to be a privately owned and maintained tract by an owners association and will be used as a neighborhood park. This tract is approximately 3.15 acres in size. The applicant also proposes to create 3 lots around existing buildings within Planning Area 2, specifically around the classroom building, the chapel library building, and the historic Big Red building. These commercial office lots will range in size from 16,594 square feet to a large of 36,668 square feet. Access to the commercial lots will come from either North 6th Street or North 7th Street, depending on which street the lot in question fronts. Parking will also be met on site, which will require approval of a separately submitted site plan. All of the lots and tracts within Planning Area 2 are consistent with the approved PDD zoning. Planning Area 3 represents the multifamily residential portion of the Scholastica PDD. It includes the largest existing building on the Scholastica site, the original dormitory. The applicant proposes to plat this entire planning area into one large lot. At 2.11 acres, it will be the single largest lot platted within the Scholastica subdivision, although the community park as a tract is larger in overall area. The applicant's intention is to subdivide the interior space within the dormitory into 43 condominium units. This will involve both a subdivision exemption to create the condominium units and a site plan to provide for off-street parking. Because the overall size of the dormitory building, fire access on the north side of the building will require the inclusion of a fire lane. The applicant will establish a fire lane easement along the northerly boundary of this lot. This fire lane is not intended for use by the general public, although depending upon where the trash enclosure structures for the dormitory building are located, trash collection vehicles may end up using this lane as well. The proposed Planning Area 3, as presented, is consistent with the approved PDD zoning. Now, in terms of the evaluation of this subdivision proposal, staff finds that the 7 prerequisites and 19 review criteria established in Section 4.10 of the city's subdivision development regulations, the Scholastica minor subdivision meets these in principle. However, as members of the council will note from the referral comments and red lines included in your agenda packets, there are some corrections the applicant needs to make before this subdivision can be formally recorded. During the Planning Commission hearing on September 25th, the applicant provided a thumb drive which contained revised materials. We are still in the process of going through those, and we hope to have a response to the applicant before the week is up. Section 4.5 of those same subdivision and development regulations indicate that a property that is fewer than 10 acres qualifies for the abbreviated minor subdivision approval process. At 7.41 acres, the Scholastica property qualifies. Finally, in terms of the ability to construct on these lots, staff finds that all of these lots have or will have, once the horizontal construction process is complete, adequate access for vehicles, fire apparatus, water, sanitary sewer, and all dry utilities such as electricity and natural gas. So with that, the Planning Commission, as I mentioned, did conduct a public hearing on the Scholastica minor subdivision request on September 25th and cited findings of fact to support the city's jurisdiction to consider this application. Staff and the Planning Commission, following that public hearing, now recommend that Council approve the Scholastica minor subdivision request, subject to the 5 conditions that are contained in staff's report. As well, staff and the Planning Commission also recommend that City Council approve Resolution 23, Series of 2019, authorizing a limited exception for the city's development standards to the requirement for a development agreement. That would conclude the staff presentation. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions that Council may have. Present to speak on behalf of this project is Mr. Phil Lund of Homes of the Canyon, LLC.
Mr. Lund, would you care to come forward in case any council has a question of you? Mr. Meisner?
My first question is, the first set of drawings that we have, how relevant and accurate are those relative to our decision?
So the clear set of drawings you have are what was submitted for the minor subdivision process. The red lines that you have are those same drawings, but which have been marked up by both Adam and myself. So they're the same drawings. What you will see as you go into the staff report and the exhibit attachments are that Adam and I have made red line corrections where we found errors on them.
Because I noticed that the alley, I don't know what, the first, I see that the alley's not on one drawing, but it appears to be the private alley, but it appears to be on another one. I don't know how relevant that is. And then the other thing is that walkway, or greenway, whatever you want to call it, you're showing it between lots 3 and 4, or it's probably not 3 and 4. It's probably 10 and 11. But unless I'm looking at a map wrong, a drawing, maybe C2, shows it between, that's 10. Must be 9 and 10. You see it?
Between 10 and 11.
What's it up there?
That's,
Between 10 and 11.
that's this tract right here that you're speaking of.
Yeah. Did you look at map C2? Do you have a C2 on there? So which is which? It looks better on C2, but who am I? I don't care where it's at.
We'll take care of the discrepancy, I'm sorry.
It's actually on,
It should be between 10 and 11. Your exhibit up here shows it in its correct and intended place. We'll revise sheet C2.
and C3.
Okay.
Yeah, it appears the civil drawings don't match the
And
plat.
C4.
Yeah. So all the civil drawings will show it between 9 and 10. Yeah.
I'm not sure where that discrepancy came from, but we'll take care of it.
I don't care where it goes, it's just those, it needs to be consistent.
Absolutely.
Well, the plat to some extent is dictating the location of that tract by virtue of the fact that once it's recorded, that tract
Right.
is a plat or a plot of legal record. Therefore, the construction drawings are going to have to match that.
Okay. I just don't want one of those little scenarios where A doesn't equal B.
What? No. Mr. Hamrick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am the city liaison to the Planning Commission, and this is the second time I've heard this, through this presentation. And I just wanted to check with the developer again, it's been a little bit later in time now, to make sure that the process seems to be proceeding speedily enough to accomplish your economic goals.
Yes, I appreciate, Councilman, you bringing that up. I am here tonight to use the word kudos. I'll use the same word, kudos to the council. Obviously, since the last time we met and with the Planning Commission, there was issues that arose that we addressed in staff and with council. And Canyon City has a reputation of sometimes being challenging for business. You are changing that reputation. And you are making it so that if the last 45 days of experience that this developer has becomes the experience that other developers have, they should be doing business in Canyon City. So I appreciate what you have done, and it is good for the business for Canyon City in the future. And if that continues to be the trajectory, good things are going to happen in Canyon City.
Thank you for those
Thank you,
words.
Mr. Lund. Thank you. Mr. Meisner?
So, as I'm understanding it, we're talking about approving this planning recommendation with 5 recommendations,
5 conditions of approval, yes.
5 conditions.
Yes.
And
Have you seen that? Yeah, we have not seen that, Tom.
Please.
The only one I was aware of, Patrick, was simply with the attorney.
my point is, I'm not interested in moving forward until everybody understands and acknowledges that those 5 conditions are achievable and realistic and are going to be met. I don't want to be having a discussion next week about, a new sidewalk or a new ramp or whatever it is. Because some of those conditions, I'm understanding, relate to a memo dated on the 18th, and then a modification of a memo, or the 13th, and then a memo on the 18th, and then a memo from the fire department. Is that correct?
Yes, and those are all referral comments that are in your agenda packet attached to this staff report.
I didn't see the fire one. Is it in there?
Yes.
Okay.
It comes after Adam's red lines.
Mr. Mayor, while the
Go ahead.
applicant is reviewing the
Yes,
5 conditions, I do have a different comment. I did make this comment during the Planning Commission meeting. And I'd like to reiterate it here for the benefit of the council and for the record. But we do have the second set of drawings that have the requested changes. And my recommendation to staff was that they separate recommended changes from required changes. Some of these appear to be in the recommendation category, dealing with fonts, things like that, that make things look better, but are not necessarily a critical path item for approval. And so that would be my request. I would repeat that request to staff, that when they give comments to people who are undergoing whatever planning process we're talking about, that they make sure they're clear about which comments have to be responded to and which comments may be optional.
Thank you, Mr. Hamrick. Ms. Smith?
Well, before I make my comments or questions, I'd like to hear from you after you reviewed the 5 conditions. Were those things that you were familiar with from the Planning Commission?
I'm a little concerned about number 2 and 5 seems to go against the resolution that I thought we were adopting tonight.
I'm not sure I understood 5.
So 5 was in fact related to the development agreement. So you can essentially take 5 off of the list, because if you adopt the resolution, this condition becomes immaterial anyway.
Is that the one about the security improvements?
Correct, correct.
And what about 2?
So condition of plat recordation, evidence shall be provided that items 10 and 11 of the city engineer's memorandum of September 13th, as modified with the revision dated September 18th and the related red line corrections to both the plat and construction documents have been made. One of the items that Adam commented in his memo had to do, again, with the development agreement. And in the drafting of this at the time, the staff, I was the one drafting this, was unaware that there was a resolution that was going to be added to this. In fact, the resolution only came to my attention after we'd already disseminated this agenda packet to the Planning Commission. So although I think the bulk of Adam's comments and his red line corrections are certainly valid, where he mentions in his comments that the development agreement, that can be removed as understood, overwritten by the resolution you're passing this evening.
So you're saying we can take off number 2, or just a portion of it?
I would say you would amend number 2 to exclude any comment in the memo pertaining to the development agreement, but the red line corrections are still valid.
Yeah, the resolution nullifies any of the discussion on the development agreement.
Mr. Arquez?
Excuse me.
Okay, so that happened on September 18th, and on September 24th, 5th, it was before the Planning Commission. At that time, I handed all the documents to Patrick, and I think they're still reviewing it. We had went through that piece by piece, so I think we're going to get back from the staff that everything has been met, and that is the plan. I think we've got just a couple issues that are specifically with the legal issues, and I'm meeting with my attorney on Wednesday to figure that out. But I think all those things have been addressed, as far as I know.
For item number 2?
That's correct.
So I have a question from the city water department, because we're doing a kind of a pre-approval, right? So go ahead, and then we'll give our final write-off when everything's complete to standards. And it said from the water department that we don't know yet what the fire flow demands are. It hasn't been analyzed yet. Are there concerns that you may have to increase the fire flow?
As far as I know, we're going to put a 6-inch into the dormitory, which becomes the condos, and that is going to be the fire suppression for that. We've got additional taps. I don't think any other building requires specifically fire suppression within that building. And that, I think, is where we're at this point. So we have a mechanical engineer that is coming in specifically into those buildings. They'll be working through the bulk of October through November, finishing up on December 1st. I think that will answer all the questions we have specifically for that.
Okay, so I just wanted to make it clear, maybe for Jimmy too, that a situation like that, there could be a change that happens depending on how that study.
Understand,
just to make it clear.
and what we're after all the time is flexibility. So we know that we're going to have to be dealing with, a wiggly road here, and what you're doing tonight gives us flexibility to do different things with different parcels, different buildings, and we're wanting to be in compliance with everything. So any changes like that, we're planning on meeting it.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank
Yep.
you.
And I might add that there's checks and balances in place for that as they come forward with the building plans, where they have to have additional approvals from the fire department, that sort of stuff. So if that were the case, it would be covered under different applications.
Ms. Jaquez, you had started. Go ahead.
Have items 3 and 4 been met? Under the condition, the 5 conditions?
I think the only one, 4 is what we're talking about.
I couldn't find that letter.
When we are ready for the building permit for the fire suppression system for the condos, which would be number 3, the comment from the fire district was make sure that you pressurize the lines and make sure they're all good. So we can't do those right now. We'll do them when we come through, when we're getting ready for our certificate of occupancy. So that'll be at the end of the construction process. So we understand their comment, but we can't do it until we're ready to sign off on that from a building department standpoint.
And as far as number 4, we're planning on meeting those. So it's a condition for us recording the plat, and we understand that, and there should not be an issue at all, so.
But you haven't submitted that to the sanitation district yet?
No, we have not.
Okay, so that hasn't been completed at all?
No, but again.
I understand, no, but it has
Yeah.
not been completed
That
at
is
all
correct.
yet? Okay, and you're working on number 3?
We're working on everything,
all right.
so yes.
Thank you, Frank. Mr. Hamrick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council. We had another development proposal in front of us. I think it was approximately a year ago for a particular piece of property that was being split. And one of the issues at that time was the requirement that the property split, which was going to create 2 lots for houses, provide a new fire hydrant in the middle of the block. And I would just like to remind council that did occur, and I believe that there was talk about changing regulations at that time, if I remember correctly, or something. But I believe that an action that we took alleviated that requirement, that property bear the entire cost of the fire hydrant in that location, when the fire hydrant was going to benefit the entire block.
No, what happened on that was they actually eliminated a lot, so they wouldn't have to deal with the fire hydrant.
Is that what happened?
That's what happened. They just eliminated, they didn't do all the lots, they eliminated one, so that one won't even be built because of that restriction for the fire hydrant.
And so, so that might be an issue then, Mr. Hawkes, of that we have not actually resolved as a council yet, of how to deal with a situation like that where one particular lot may have to bear the entire burden for an entire block or a block and a half, something like that.
Yeah, that'll be up to those folks. Like I say, that builder decided, I'll just vacate that lot, I won't build on it because of that restriction they put on him. So that took care of itself. We didn't have to even get involved in that part.
Thank you for that. And I just wanted to make sure that that subject was brought up so that people understood that in a case like this where you're actually developing a whole block, it's a little bit different situation than if you were just developing one lot in the middle of this whole tract.
Right. And we've added 2 fire hydrants into this proposal, so.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Meisner?
Isn't the fire hydrant requirement a fire district issue, not a city issue? Isn't that correct? Aren't they the controlling factor there?
Right, that's how
Right.
that was resolved in that instance that I think Mr. Hamrick's talking about is we chose not to be the enforcer of the fire code in that scenario.
Right.
Yeah.
And then second,
Yeah, again, it's a little different in this scenario, back to the fire flow stuff, is there's different checks and balances here for them because of the type of construction they're doing. So they have to address some of those things because of their occupancies and things like that. So it is kind of a different story.
And this is hypothetical, but I guess, that purple alleyway, or whatever we're calling that, aren't you going to add sewer through there?
No.
No?
No, not for
No
what they're
plans.
doing, no. In fact, the structures that are already in those lots already have sewer service. They're existing structures.
And those south lots?
Right, so the south lot is the condo, the dorm building. It already has sewer service.
No, the south side of the yellow lots
Oh,
there.
those lots, yes, there will be sewer in that,
Oh, yes.
that alley, yes.
In that alley?
I thought you were talking about the fire access.
Oh,
Yes.
no,
Yeah.
no.
That alley gets water and sewer.
Okay,
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
planning on putting utilities in there.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else?
When are you planning to start breaking ground on these 3 different projects?
Well, as I mentioned, the mechanical engineers are going to be in there until December 1st, so we're anticipating construction will start on the dormitory into condos, and we're expecting a September finish on that one of next year, so we're anticipating 9 months. Excuse me. We are in negotiations for the chapel building, and we're going to leave that to the developer there. I have 2 interested parties in the classroom building that I'm working with, and we're hoping that in the next 30 days, we have purchase agreements on all 3 of the red properties at this point. And that, again, was always our plan, to move all of these forward at the same time by getting additional investments. And this action tonight will certainly help that.
Okay. I would like to close the meeting, but apparently, Mr. Meisner, you have a comment.
Well, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, because I thought last meeting we were all on the same page, and a couple of days later, I find out we're not. So how do we all put our thumbs up that this all makes sense?
Communication is key, and staying on the same course is key without veering off. And I think that we are in that position. We all know that we've had struggle here, and since March we've had struggle, but we are committed to, after this process is over with, sitting down with any staff that wants to sit with us and telling our anecdotal experience with this, and helping people maybe fashion it so that it's a smoother course. At this point, I believe that in visiting with Ryan, the city administrator, and with Patrick and even Adam, that we are on the right course. And are we going to have things that spring up in the future? I'm expecting that will happen. But right now, we're satisfied that we've got a plan in place that is going to work, and we're ready to go.
Okay, Mr. Hammer?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
If I may, I'd like to make one comment.
Yes.
We have on the fly this evening made changes to numbers 1 through 5 of staff's recommendations. I would suggest that we go one by one tonight with the motion to make sure that the recorded motion is exactly what we want to have, and not just a blanket statement that says we're accepting based on items 1 through 5 of staff's recommendations. Please.
Mr. Hammer?
Thank you. And so once this public hearing is closed and we have voted on this particular proposal in front of us, this ordinance in front of us, then our, absent some other circumstances, council's legal involvement in this is over with. Would that be correct? And the reason, let me tell you the reason I'm asking the question. I have a reason, and the reason is because I think that there is a sense of council that we would like to be able to sit down with the developer, talk about our codes in some possibly open forum about how to make this process better. And so that's my question: is that possible after our action tonight? Will we be able to sit down with the developer and talk some turkey about our civil codes?
This is the last quasi-judicial matter before the council on this, so yes.
And then we move into a legislative area.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, it takes 3 to call a special city council meeting, so, yep.
We're actually planning on bringing to the I guess it's now the October 22nd meeting, some suggestions for Title 16.
Okay.
So there will be an open forum to discuss Title 16 at that point.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public meeting then and ask for a, if your wish is to amend that,
Well,
1 through 5?
They
or-
wish that we go through 1 through 5 together to make sure whatever amendments we make are consistent. Is that right? So do you want,
Again, 2 is the one I have concerns about because I don't have the red lines in front of me. I'm assuming that, as far as I know, Patrick, we are good with what I gave you on that date, and the only outstanding issue that I'm aware of are the legal issues that we have to deal with, so.
And the only legal issues, just so council is aware, is some back and forth related to the declarations.
Yes.
Well, and the development agreement.
Well, the development agreement is going to be taken
No.
care of with the
Right,
resolution.
but I think it's also in number 2.
The development agreement issues get completely mooted if council approves the next resolution.
Correct.
That's gone.
Correct.
Right.
so number 2, you suggested an amendment for number 2.
My
Can you give-
amendment for number 2 was to make sure that that particular condition makes clear any reference in Adam's comment memo and in his red line corrections to a development agreement should be excluded.
Specifically, it's item 12 in my memo. So if you just want to strike item 12 in the city engineer's memo,
Is that the 18th memo?
913.
But item number 12 is not even mentioned in, I'm understanding the entire memo doesn't apply, it's only items 10 and 11. The way you've written item number 2, we're only talking about 10 and 11 being issues.
I have no idea what 10 and
Well, it
11
says,
It's on condition number 2.
evidence shall be provided that 10 and 11, it doesn't mention the entire memo. I just say strike 2. If we've taken care of 10 and 11,
We certainly would be fine with that.
Well, there's some red line requirements. It sounds like you already met those.
That is my understanding.
And we are in the process of confirming that. At first blush, it appears most of our red lines have been addressed, but we haven't had the chance to formally look at everything yet.
Okay, and then we're totally striking number 5.
We are totally striking number 5.
And did you have any concerns or recommended amendments to 3 or 4?
Can I see 3? First of all, I appreciate the council taking time and diving into the details of this, so I know you've got a busy agenda, and we appreciate this. Thank you. No, 3 we're going to comply with without any problem at all, and I have no problem with what Fremont Sanitation put forth.
Strike it
So-
if you want to.
I was just going to go ahead and make a motion. And I was going to amend number 2 to make any reference or comments to the development agreement to be mute, and with specifically striking item number 12, but that it will include the red line requirements, which at first glance, they've met, but just to make sure.
where are you getting number 12?
That was
If
from
you
Adam's
look at
comments.
Adam's September 13th memo, he's got it numbered in a series of sections.
Right.
And number 12, item number 12,
But number 12 is not listed as a condition
Correct.
on this document, so it
That's
doesn't
right.
matter.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's
Right?
correct.
Am I not interpreting that
That's
correctly?
correct. Yep.
So where are we at with 10 and 11?
we are in the process of evaluating those. We got the thumb drive on the night of the 25th of September, and we have not had a chance to go fully in-depth through all of it yet. We were sort of waiting until we got beyond tonight's hearing.
But 10's pretty simple, it's just changing something to say Scholastica minor subdivision, right? I mean, that's easy doings. Can you explain number 11, Adam? What's going on there?
Yeah, essentially, number 11 refers to the red lines of the plat and plans. That's what it does. So number 10 in my memo talks about the covenants and agreements for the common open spaces and elements.
Wait a minute, wait a
And
minute,
then number 11,
wait a minute.
yep,
What date memo are you looking at?
913.
And what does your number 10 say?
10 is referring to the common open space elements.
No.
No. Not in the 13th.
Number
memo.
10 says the title on sheet 2 shall read St. Scholastica Minor Subdivision. I mean, that's pretty simple for me. And that's on a memo.
I think you're looking at my memo. I think you may be looking at my memo.
Ay, ay, ay.
This shows some of the confusion that has been out there. that
Yeah, no
we've struggled
kidding. So
with,
let's just strike number 2.
I think you should just strike number 2. I think you're beating her. I think just strike number 2.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm asking, is that if staff feels like that we've accomplished 2, then let's get it out of there. But if we haven't resolved it, now that I'm on the right memo, you're right, it does talk about open space. So you're saying 10 is the red line stuff?
11 is the red line
Yeah.
stuff.
Yep. So it's not resolved. The applicant has provided revised submittals, which haven't been reviewed. But they're confident that they're covered. The issues are covered.
We're good.
So we're good with number 2, the way it reads, in terms of 10 and 11?
Yes.
You're absolutely good. If you want to keep 2, keep 2. We're fine with
Okay.
it. It's done. They're reviewing it, but it's not a problem.
Mr. Mayor,
Please.
I would like to make a motion that we adopt resolution number 20, series of 2019,
I believe that's 23.
or 23. Amending number 2 to discount any references in connection to the development agreement, but to include the red line requirements on plat plans, and striking number 5 condition.
Second.
The motion's been made and second. Any discussion on that motion? Mr. Meisner?
So, Mr. Attorney, Resolution 23, what is it doing? Is it getting rid of the agreement only?
Yes,
That's the only thing it's doing?
that is correct.
So what's the relevance of 23 with this?
The conditions that relate to the development agreement, which are condition number 5 and a portion of condition number 2, will no longer be part of the conditions upon adoption of the resolution. Because the resolution is creating an exception where the development agreement is no longer required.
Do we have a separate resolution that's approving this change? Or is that 23 also? Because I don't see anything in 23 that talks about approving. Or am I missing something?
It is a motion to approve the subdivision, and then the resolution is the exception.
Yeah.
The resolution is coming next. Right now, we're approving the subdivision. The resolution number 23, if you look at your schedule, is next. So we'll have to ask a vote on that next. So let's cover the approval of the subdivision. That's what
So
we're doing right now.
why don't we just leave 2 alone? They said they were okay with it, so let's just leave 2 alone and eliminate 5. They just said they're okay with 2.
Well, I already made the motion.
The motion's been made and seconded. A discussion.
I just want to comment that it has been quite a journey we've been on together, Mr. Lund. I appreciate your patience and your dedication to seeing this through. I am extremely thrilled and excited to see the development at St. Scholastica and new life being breathed back into it. It's meeting so many needs for Canyon City, and I appreciate it. The City Council is open for business. We do want to be flexible. As a matter of fact, I think we will insist on being flexible. This is a long legacy that we are trying to turn the ship on, and it's not going to turn it's not going to turn overnight, but we are working on it. And I think, as you said, the conversation we had tonight was indicative of the confusion with communication that's clear, with a straight flow of information in the organization. I think we have a lot of work to do to make this better. But I know I, for one, and I think I speak for the rest of us, are strongly committed to making that happen. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion on that motion? Mr. Meisner?
I know this is frustrating, but I'm lost.
All this is
We're approving,
the subdivision, as you see it right there. Basically, that's
and
what we're
what's that,
doing.
what's the number of that resolution?
That is the number of 23 Series 2019, a resolution for City of Canyon City authorizing the exception of the city's development standards. That, and if you look down there, that is approving the Scholastica minor subdivision. That's what we're doing now. We're going to do the resolution next.
No, it is not.
Okay,
Right
it's
now,
not. Forget
we
what I
are-
said.
Right now, you are approving item number 9A by motion. A motion is a
Yes,
verbal
that's-
resolution.
That's what I
They are
said.
the same,
The Scholastica minor subdivision.
yes.
That's
and
what I
then-
said.
But
That's what I
not the
said.
resolution.
The resolution will be next.
Correct.
That's what I said. All right.
So we are approving the subdivision
Would you call the roll, please?
with amendments.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
You know, I'm all for everything that you guys are wanting to do, okay? But I can't see changing something that you folks were willing to leave in there just because Ashley thinks it's economical or feasible, get rid of it right away. I want your project to go. The only reason I'm voting no is because I want to leave it the way you folks were willing to leave it, just eliminating number 5.
Councilmember Meisner?
Yay.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Aye.
Aye. Something like that. Aye.
So majority got it, right? Good, okay. Let's go on to the second, we're going to go for approving the resolution, number 23 of 2019. We'd like to call for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt resolution number 23, series of 2019, please.
Okay,
Second.
made and second. Any discussion on that motion? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
All right.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
Are we,
Oh,
staff, I think this is it, right? You can, all right, thank you for being
Thanks,
here.
staff.
Thank you.
Adam.
Let's go on to, as suggested, either 9A or 9.1 off of that was pulled off the consent agenda. It states it was H on our consent agenda. It's authorize the mayor to sign the Fremont Humane Society of, the Fremont Humane Society of Fremont County contract for 2020. And should we start off with public comment, or would the council like to comment first?
Oh, just do some comment.
All right, let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and call names as I pretty much got them handed to me. And the winner this evening, the first up is Laura Borchek. Is Laura here? Would you step forward and we'll put you on the clock?
Good evening. I'm Laura Boucher. I am the volunteer/transfer/events coordinator over at the Humane Society. I've been there for 6 months, and yeah, I can only say when I started in there, it was a mess. No SOPs in place. Paperwork was missing. I can only speak to what I've seen as far as a volunteer program. Going off of a couple of the letters that have been written, and I know you guys have copies of those, the Save Our Shelter information, you know, there was a volunteer program in place. However, it was not ran correctly. You know, the paperwork wasn't how it should be. There was stated that there were a group of 100 volunteers that left. I have over 160 that are in there now, coming in every day, every other day, once in a while. We have not lost our volunteer program. We have not lost our spay and neuter program. The mobile clinic will be down the end of November for 3 days. And we also have another clinic that is scheduled with Soul Dog Rescue and Dr. Ashley Metcalf with Fremont Vet. As far as rehabilitation and training for some of the animals that are in there, we've been working with a behaviorist coming down from Denver. Her name is Deb Nab. She's the mutt master. She's been doing this for 30 years. She's not only training staff, she's training volunteers so that, we know the behaviors to look for so that we can get these animals turned around and back into the public. As far as dangerous animals out into the public, we have to make those evaluations before they go anywhere. We are not sending them out without proper information. One of the other big ones that I want to touch on is transferring, since I am the coordinator. There's been a lot of transparency being called for. Rescues, unless they specifically tell you that you can tell people where these animals went, you don't. They specifically ask that, you don't tell where they went, which goes to volunteers being in animal files. There could be personal information from owner surrenders. It's illegal for us to show that to anyone that's not on staff. Like I said, I haven't been doing this very long. Animal welfare it's a calling, and I think that it called for me. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Laura. Any questions of council? Mr. Meisner?
That wasn't me.
You wore it out.
So, I think just two questions. You get an animal in that you've deemed as not adoptable. What happens?
So if they are deemed not adoptable, we are a no-kill facility, which is healthy, adoptable animals. Depends on the situation. If it's an unadoptable animal that can't be released back into into Fremont County, there is no other choice, unfortunately, than to humanely euthanize that animal. And I honestly think that's where a lot of the community doesn't understand the real definition of no-kill. It is healthy, adoptable animals. It's not every single animal is going to be, warehoused in the shelter. It's healthy, adoptable animals.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
The next is Gloria Decker. Is Gloria here? Would you step up, please? Behind Carrie.
Good evening.
Hi, Laura. Could we have your name again and your address?
I'm Gloria Decker, a volunteer at the Humane Society since December 2018. I'm part of the dog enrichment program known as KONGS. I'm here to speak as to what I have personally observed since new staffing has occurred. I have seen the shelter manager make walkthroughs, speaking with staff and to me. When delivering the KONGs, I have seen the manager checking the area in back and the yard. Radios are now in several locations, greatly helping calm the dogs, less barking. I have seen kennel staff doing walkthroughs, checking water, food, and for clean kennels. If a dog has an accident or I see a kennel needing attention, they're on it, followed with a mop bucket wiping the area, sanitation, and odor control. The large sink is no longer filled with items to be cleaned and sanitized, including needed KONGs. The laundry no longer is piled up. I know this because this is the area where KONGs are prepared. There is now a sense of cooperation and communication. The present staff and volunteers are truly dedicated to the animals. As a volunteer, I know I have a voice, and I know who to go to if there ever would be an issue. In trying to give a voice to the voiceless, I believe the animals that have and those that will come through the doors of this shelter would say, "Thank you for being there. For without this shelter, where would I go? Who would care for me when my life has gone sideways?" Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gloria. Any questions of Gloria? Thank you again. All right, Vicki, I'm not gonna do your name right, but let's say Vicki. Is Vicki here? I'm sorry, ma'am, would you pronounce your last name? And
Zaliga.
Zaliga, thank you.
In the interest of saving time for City Council, we've chosen to have only one person be the speaker. So I'm speaking on behalf of all of those who, I guess, are going to be standing up here in the chamber right now. And I'm highlighting specific issues from a document that you have received. We're a grassroots group wanting transparency, accountability, and humane treatment of animals. Our concerns that we're going to be discussing here are not limited to these that I'm speaking of. The shelter management withheld available funding for medical care. Use of euthanasia drugs were 3 years past their expiration date, leading to prolonged deaths. Unclean, unsanitary conditions and unsafe cleaning products were used. Animals were difficult to adopt due to age, health, type, or behavior. Management requirements were kept at the shelter indefinitely, causing mental and physical stress. Animals with potentially dangerous behavioral history have been adopted out into the community or transferred to other communities without disclosure to the adopting party. Animals are not given behavior evaluations prior to adoption, nor is it adequate counseling and training support provided. HSFC had no standard procedure for recording and quantifying human bite or animal attack histories to assess the public safety risk of adoption and transferred potentially dangerous animals. Important behavior history, compatibility, and aggression with animals has been removed from the surrender form questionnaire. Staff had been instructed not to share behavior information with volunteers who handled and cared for the animals. Lack of adequate medical screening and care had allowed diseases and illnesses to spread in the shelter and be passed along to adopters and transfer partners. The shelter's no-kill save rate over the past 5 years was accomplished by transferring animals out to larger shelters and rescue partners and warehousing animals. Larger city shelters and rescue organizations that had previously worked with HSFC will no longer partner due to the poor management and procedures. Staff spending has increased dramatically in response to PACFA enforcement of minimum sanitary and animal care requirements. Available animal care and office staff budget was either withheld for the past years or has been taken from other necessary operation budgets. All of us here want the best for those animals. What we saw, all of us, while we volunteered, what we saw there was the complete opposite of what these people had said. Possibly they have a new director, I don't know, because I haven't been down to volunteer since there has been a change and I was not allowed information about animals that I would go back and work with. And I didn't want to go into a kennel where I would be bitten. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Meisner.
Thank you for your information. Am I correct in understanding that your association with the Humane Society was only as a volunteer?
Yes, sir.
How long did you volunteer?
For 2.5 years.
From what time frame?
I ended in April of this year of 2019.
Did you create this sheet?
It was created by a group of the volunteers who had issues, were wanting something to be done to be better the conditions that were being held down there at the Humane Society.
How many of these items on this sheet can you personally attest to that you saw or experienced?
I would have to count how many there are, but I would say at least a half of them. I was not in the management side, so therefore when it comes to records, except for the fact that the animals that I specifically worked with were the ones that came in that were so scared they would just cringe and be back shaking in the corner of the kennel. And I would go in with them and I would work with them. Those animals that came in that had never had a collar on, had never been on a leash, had never been socialized with other animals or humans, I would go in and work with those animals and get them to the point where they would be adopted out. They were kept in the back area for the most part. There's a back area of the Humane Society, if you know, that the public does not go into. Those animals would be more in those kennels in the back to keep them away from the public, to make sure that there wasn't anybody who would get hurt. But when I go in, I would need to know some of the background on that animal so that I wouldn't go into a kennel and be bit. Or as I'm trying to get out of the kennel, turn and try to unlatch the kennel to get out, that I wouldn't have an animal attack me. And when I'm not allowed to get that information as to what is a dangerous animal, that puts me into danger, let alone if an animal is given out to the public and not be told that this animal has killed another animal or this animal has bitten children in the past. These are issues that we were working with and dealing with. As I said, I hear that these people have said everything's hunky-dory at this time. That would be fantastic. That is not what the rest of us saw. That's why the rest of us had wanted to bring this out of, we need to have some people check and make sure that there are policies in place that we're not going to have not only the animals be hurt, but we're not going to have anybody out in the community be hurt because they adopt an animal and don't have the full background on whether there's a bite history or not.
Okay. Anyone else have a question for Vicki?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Okay. I could do this one. Crystal Pemberton. Crystal. Your name again and address, please.
My name is Crystal Pemberton, and I live in Fremont County, 1161 Pennsylvania Avenue, here in Canyon. I'm the business office manager at the Humane Society of Fremont County, and I've been a bookkeeper for over 19 years. This month, I'll be celebrating my 6th year at the Humane Society. And I couldn't be happier. Sorry, short people problems. I wanted to share my piece of this ridiculous puzzle that I have witnessed firsthand on many things that happen at the shelter. The working environment for the past 4 years was like high school. Some of the previous staff and volunteers were a cliquish group, the popular kids, the center of attention. You get my point. If you didn't fit in, you were not cool and not around very long. That went for anybody, staff or volunteers. Many people that will hear this tonight know exactly what I'm talking about. There's more of 20 of you out there. I want to apologize to you for how you were treated and hope that you'll get to know our new team at the shelter. I've never been a fan of those kind of people who didn't accept you for who you are, didn't want to associate with them because you didn't fit in, that they would be looking for gossip, the next story, to make themselves look good, knowing that you would be used and anyone around you would be too, just to get what they want. Manipulation, retaliation, and vindictive behavior was strong. You're wondering, why didn't I do anything about it? I didn't, because People like that are expert actors. People like that could make themselves believable just by saying the right thing to Doug. And Doug had no idea they were capable of such acts. Never would have believed it. I truly believe that what goes around comes around, and that they would dig their own hole, and that one day they would be judged just like they judged so many other people. I have sat next to Doug for day in and day out for 5 years. I've gotten to know him pretty well. He is as honest as they come, always putting the best interest of the shelter first. To see his good name be dragged through the mud angers me quite a bit. Do you think he was the only person responsible for what happens at the shelter? No. The previous staff and volunteers should stand up and accept the fact that they had just as much responsibility. That they volunteered or were hired to do a job, and because of their actions is why the shelter is having to deal with the negativity today. Why so much hatred towards the Humane Society? Because they feel that they were done wrong or believe that they were entitled to something? I say, stop with the lies, knock it off. Enough is enough.
Thank you.
Some will say I'm wrong about all of this. Prove it. I was there. Thank you for letting me vent.
Thank you, Crystal. Any questions of Crystal? Mr. Meisner?
You're currently still working at the Humane Society?
I am. I've been there for 6 years.
So this is where I get a little confused, is I see you in a position where you're telling us that you could see all the things that were going wrong with the shelter. You didn't feel comfortable apparently communicating those things to Mr. Ray. So how did that whole process happen? I mean, how does the whole shelter, apparently being operated under some difficult positions, and Mr. Ray has no idea what's going on? How does that happen?
He was only given the information that they wanted him to have.
Any other questions of Crystal?
Crystal, have you seen this letter?
I have.
Can you, I would like to know how many of these things have been addressed and have been changed?
Many of the things on there have been addressed and changed. We have a lot of new policies in place now. There is a lot of communication going on daily, weekly. Anything that comes up is brought to Doug's attention immediately.
Can you give me an example of some of the policy changes?
We have put in SOPs, standard operating procedures. Our new shelter manager and the kennel manager has been working very, very hard on getting those in place. That way everybody is on the same page as how things are to go. Regarding that letter, they said that there was no procedure for grievances, for where to go to if you have issues. I brought along our handbook, and it does describe in there every step of the way, process and procedure that you would take if you have a grievance, if you have an issue, if you have problems. And it is signed by every staff member, and I have it on file, that they've read it and acknowledged it.
Do you still have expired euthanasia medication
We
at
do
the
not.
facility?
We do not have expired euthanasia drugs in the building at all.
Any other question?
I'm sorry, may I touch base on that just a little bit?
Briefly, you may, yes.
Okay. It is stated on that letter that the euthanasia drugs, because they were expired, made the animals have long, prolonged deaths, horrible deaths that last for hours. I do have a document here that I took the average length of time that it took for the animal to go into the room and to the time of death, and that is only 15 minutes, even with expired euthanasia drugs. And that does not even include the time it took for sedation. So their claims of them being an hour long and it's horrible death that you can think of is incorrect.
Okay, Frank.
The question I have, I don't know if you can answer, but the question I have, there's a notation that indicates that the board board members do not have any knowledge of what's going on. Do they post, kind of like we do, we post our meetings, it's open to the public to come in and that? Do they post when the boards of directors are going to have the meeting and indicate that it's open to anyone to come in and express their opinions?
We don't have a meeting that is posted to the public right now. Doug keeps close contact with the board and keeps them updated weekly by emails.
You see, and to me, okay, yeah, I don't know how to do it, but to me, that's an important thing. You know, you post that your board of directors should post, we're having a meeting on Tuesday, open to the public, and anybody can come and speak, okay? Just like I belong to other board of director meetings, and when we have it, it's there for anybody to come in and listen to what's going on with our meeting, so that if there's any questions going on, just like this meeting here, it's open up, people can speak about stuff and concerns they have. So if they aren't doing that, to me, that's wrong.
They should be.
That's wrong. That should be there, so these folks that are complaining, if it's a legitimate complaint, they can go to those board of director meetings and tell them what the problems are, so that it can be dealt with the board of directors and with the management. So if they're not doing that, in my opinion, that's really bad.
I agree with you. We do need to have those open to the public so they can address their concerns.
Thank you, Frank. Mr. Meisner.
Thank you. Based on your comment, it sounded like relative to the euthanasia process, that you were aware that they were using a drug that was outdated, but then you were going in there and studying how long it took the animal to pass. Did I understand that right?
I did not know that the drugs were expired at that time. But if they want to claim that because of expired drugs, the animals suffered long, painful deaths that lasted an hour, that's when I took that information of how long it did take. And no, it did not take an hour. It's 15 minutes average.
So do you normally go in and log how long it takes an animal to pass?
Every animal is logged euthanasia when they are euthanized. And it is initialed off on the time they enter the room, time sedation sometimes, and time of death. And there are always 2 people that sign off on that.
I guess I have a quick question. Oftentimes for transparency, I guess, in city government, we have independent auditors that come and audit certain departments. Do you ever have an opportunity to have an independent auditor come to your shelter to give their neutral opinion on what's happening?
I would welcome one. Anybody who would love to come down to spend a day with me, go through anything they would like, I welcome you.
Okay. Anyone else for Crystal? Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you.
Okay, we would have, is Lisa still here? Oh, there's Lisa. Would you, yeah, come on up, give us your name and what you're thinking.
Good evening, Lisa Himes. I live at 3165 Grandview Avenue in Canyon City. To kind of real quickly answer a question that was addressed to Crystal before I give my thing, they do have independent auditors, if you will. We have PACFA, or they have, the shelter has PACFA that comes in regularly. USDA can come in. There's several others that will come in and do investigations into how things are being run. And they make sure that they're following all the standards that are required. So is it a formal audit? Basically, yes.
Do we have reports of those most recent audits?
Pardon me?
Are there reports of the most recent audits? And were there any recommendations for changes on those?
My time's ticking away, just to
Okay,
let
sorry,
someone
yeah,
know.
Lisa needs a little bit more time. Yeah.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, what I want to say is I joined the Humane Society as a volunteer coordinator in July of 2017. And I worked with them until technically until February, but in the end of November, beginning of December, I actually went to volunteer status. In the time that I was volunteer coordinator, and I also, helped plan events, special events, at no time did any of the volunteers come up to me to talk to me about any problems or concerns that they had with what was going on at the shelter. I left the shelter because of my inability to get along with the shelter manager. And as you may know, as far as the shelter is concerned, you have your executive director, which is the role that Doug plays, and then you have various managers underneath. I was the community programs manager, so I was directly opposite the shelter manager. Unfortunately, we couldn't communicate. She wouldn't talk to me, she'd blow right by me, she wouldn't answer my questions, and she made working there extremely difficult. And I did talk to Doug. I did tell him my concerns about the way things were being done. The previous shelter manager was a very hard worker. I will never, ever condemn her for that. She worked hard and she did everything she could, but she did it her way. And those were the things that I addressed with Doug, that I had my concerns. He specifically would ask her to do something, she would say she did it, and she hadn't. This went on, and I did bring it to his attention. She was a hard worker, and she had a close relationship with him. Anyway, now, let's go fast forward. I have never seen the shelter, the employees get along, have a camaraderie. Before, it was very tense, it was very insecure. There was a lot of jabbing at one another, and that just doesn't exist anymore. They have a lot of camaraderie, they get along well. It's never smelled better. We now have a new person that's cleaning the kennels, and they're doing an excellent job in there. And just the whole dynamic has been so fantastic in the last 6 months. And I just want to say how everything turned for the better. Yes, from what I understand, because when I heard all the stories that you heard, everything that's written in there, I immediately went to several different sources and said, tell me what went on here, because I'm not going to defend you if I don't have the story. And I got the stories from several different sides. And I believe that Doug Ray has put into place the things to make sure that this type of thing does not happen again. He does have the animals' best interests at heart, and the people that work for him. One of the things he did very well as an executive director was to allow his managers to do their job. And sometimes he did it a little too well.
Okay.
I think now he's managing that the way he should.
Okay.
So he has my 100% complete support.
Any questions of Council of Lisa?
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That's it. Those are all the people that gave the name. Any discussions of council? Mr. Hemrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say my personal experience. I've been a dog owner essentially since I became an adult. I won't say what year that was that I became an adult, but the
disclosure.
I've been an animal owner all that time. I did spend 4 years of my working career caring for horses in Southern California for show horses, and I have the utmost concern for their well-being, and I'm glad that we have people here that are concerned and are willing to express their concerns. I think that this is an extremely difficult path to walk, to have an animal shelter. It is I'm sure can be thankless at times, but just trying to make the decision, what are truly life and death decisions for the animals, considering their best interest and the best interest of society, is an extremely difficult situation to be in. I'm glad we've had this discussion here tonight and have heard some of the concerns. myself, the way that I resolve this matter is, it sounds to me like that a lot of the things that, some of the things that are brought up in the piece of paper that we have, the concerns that we have are fairly old concerns. And it sounds like the people that have knowledge of how things have been going for approximately the last 6 months are well satisfied. I do not think that we have an option to not provide the funds. That would certainly take away a service for our community. It would take away a service that I believe is vital for for the animals that we have in this community. But I would like to thank everybody that has come for your participation.
Thank you, Mr. Meisner.
My questions would be directed at Doug.
Would you come up, Doug?
Thank you, Doug. To start with, so what's the longest period of time you currently have an animal that stayed at the shelter right now? I guess I'm asking that right. In other words,
I don't know that exact number. My
Roughly.
shelter manager may.
I mean, what's the longest period of time that you currently have housed an animal, would you suspect? I mean, 6 months, a year and a half, 90 days?
Again, she's going to have better information than I am, so I'm going to defer that question to Susan, my shelter manager.
Okay.
Okay?
Would you like to come address that?
5 years.
Or give us a hand signal?
I mean,
or
can she
something?
just come up there with, if you can't answer these, somebody. And what goes along with that is what's the longest period you currently have an animal that's been at the shelter, whether that's 6 months or 6 years? And second of all, I mean, how many animals do you have there that have been there more than 6 months?
Hi,
And I
I'm
just picked 6 months.
Hi, I'm Susan Fredenberg. I'm the shelter manager. I started April 11th. Right now, we currently have 3 dogs. Thanks. 3 dogs that I inherited that have been there over a year. So the longest that we have right now is Mac and Stan and Koala, and they've all been over there 450 days.
Okay. What's the longest, do you have an average length of stay?
Yes, since I've been there, our average length of stay is 14 days.
So how much education or information is passed along to all of your staff, volunteers, paid staff, whatever, in terms of the behavior of the animals as they come in, or the risks that's associated with that particular animal?
We do things a little different than they did 6 months ago.
I don't want to know what they did 6 months ago.
But at intake is what we base it on. So just because we are no-kill does not mean that every single animal that you come to surrender to me, I'm going to accept.
Right.
So if the animal is dangerous and can't be put into the community, we give the owner 2 options. And the first one, we encourage them to take him to the vet and have him euthanized. Or they can surrender it to us for euthanasia. But we don't put out animals that aren't healthy or treatable up for adoption.
So relative to that, just to get, how long have you been a manager?
I've been there for 6 months.
So in the 6 months that you've been there, approximately how many dangerous animals have you had to accept that you had to euthanize?
I'd say 4.
How many animals have you refused to accept?
Haven't refused any. We've encouraged them to go to the vet and be with
Well,
them.
that's refusing.
No, because I would still take them if they didn't want to go to the vet. We try and educate them and let them know what it's going to be like for the animal to be alone with strangers. And so we talk to them, and we tell them how much more comfortable it's going to be for the animal to have its owner there as it's being put to sleep, as opposed to somebody that they don't know.
So how many did you suggest got taken elsewhere?
I think we've suggested 3. And I want to add that they were glad that we educated them, and they did come back and say thank you.
So I'm interpreting that there's only been 7 animals in the last 6 months that have been brought to the shelter that were dangerous type animals. Is that correct? 7.
That is correct.
So if an animal's brought in that's dangerous, the issue of educating staff isn't an issue because the animal's never accepted.
Well, there's dangerous and there's behavior issues. Now, we accept dogs that have behavior issues, and that's why we've gotten Deb Nab. So she helps us with the behavior issues, but they aren't dangerous. They have issues that need to be worked out before they can go up for adoption.
Ms. Smith?
Well, one quick question. What is the reason why you have 3 dogs that have been there for over a year? Why are they not adoptable?
These are dogs that I inherited, and they all had major dog issues when I came on board. I don't think that it was my place to come in after not knowing these animals and not give them a chance and just euthanize them. So we have Deb Knapp, who is working with them. And they're coming along great, by the way.
I was going to say, at what point do you decide that they are not healthy, safe animals to be adoptable?
They're healthy and they're safe. Do I think that they can live with another dog? No. But these are dogs that have even gone on pack walks, and just got to respect their bubble.
Okay. I guess my kind of concluding comments are that the biggest issue here is taking care of our animals as best we can. That's the most important thing. We only have one shelter. And this is a huge need that's being filled for our taxpayers here. And looking forward, I would like to see some of those independent audit reports that came in from neutral parties and the documented changes that were made accordingly. I do feel an obligation that we make sure that that taxpayer money is spent correctly. And that is an empowerment to you, too, to know that that you can stand behind those audits and know that you're in compliance.
I will get you all of those reports tomorrow, every one of them.
Thank you. And
Excuse me, if you would, provide those to Ryan so that he can.
yeah, then he'll distribute it to all of us. And just so that you're looking to the future for funding next year, that we are watching and listening, and we'd like to hear how things are going as the year comes forward. And we appreciate the work that has been done to improve the shelter and make it better for our animals. And we're glad to hear that you're taking ownership over that and responsibility for it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Arquez?
I would like the young lady that was up there to come back up there, please. Okay, I realize you've only been there 6 months, but my question is going to be this. It's almost kind of like the last statement I made with regards to notification of publication of board of director meetings for those folks that aren't satisfied have a place to talk. Is there any kind of a memorandum that you know of with your position that states that you will contact the director with regards to stuff like what we've talked about? 3 dogs that have been there over a year. Apparently, there hasn't been any, in a sense, we don't know in the past. But is there something now that you say, in the position you have, you will get and have a meeting with him to indicate problem areas with regards to animals that we have, how long we've had them, and stuff like that, so remedies can be looked at to justify and correct any of those situations? So is there any kind of a written memorandum that you have for you?
Yes, so we currently have 3 things going on right now, and we have hired a kennel manager, we have myself, and we have 2 other managers. We meet weekly, and then we have a team meeting every Thursday, which is everybody who works there. I personally meet with Doug every single Tuesday. Every Saturday, I do it's an email, and I have all of them, a checkout. And this tells him, this is what's happening with this dog, these are my behavior dogs, these are how long these dogs have been here. These dogs have been here, and cats, I might add, have been here over 30 days. These are my medical issues that you need to be looking out for. Anything and everything that you would want to know is in my report, and I give that to him every week.
Okay, well, I don't want to disagree with some of the stuff you're saying, but apparently not all of it is accurate, because a question was asked and he couldn't answer it for us. He had to bring you up to answer those questions. So apparently not everything is being, hear an answer, okay? Thank you very much.
Stay.
Any other questions of Doug?
Just a statement.
Please.
I mean, we've got a list full of concerns with some disgruntled previous staff and volunteers. Some of that's probably accurate, some of it's probably not as accurate as it needs to be. As Ms. Smith said, we're taking public funds and funding this organization. My expectation is obviously to move forward with this adjustment that we did, 2%? A 2% adjustment. My personal opinion is we need the Humane Society to move forward, and we need the executive director to be involved in understanding what's going on in that organization. I don't want to be in this situation next year where our executive director is saying, well, I really didn't realize what was going on. So, I mean, you and I have had a really good relationship over the years, but that's where I'm at. I don't want to be in that same situation next year that I didn't realize that was going on.
Well, Susan made a comment that she has a staff meeting every week, an entire full staff meeting, and she also made a comment that she meets with the kennel manager every week. I am part of both of those meetings.
Okay.
Every
She
week.
didn't mention that.
And
Okay.
I meet with Susan daily. We just talk daily. I know more right now because of Susan than I've probably known in the past 4 years.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Any questions or comments? Thank you, Doug. How would you like to handle that? Should we vote separately on that, or someone would like to make a, Mr. Meisner?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I move that we approve the 2020 contract, right? It's 2020 contract for the Humane Society for $62,000 roughly plus a 2%, which includes a 2% increase from previous year.
We authorize the city manager to sign.
Mayor.
Mayor.
City
Yeah,
mayor.
we'll let the manager sign it, or
I think the mayor should sign it. I got to do something.
Yeah, let the mayor sign it.
Thank you, that's what it says.
Whose name's on it?
The mayor.
The mayor's name's on the contract.
I moved that we allow the mayor to sign it.
Thank you.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion?
I second it.
The only thing is, we're going to get this through, but I hope you listen to everything that was brought up with regards to, like we said, some of it could be factual, some of it may not be factual, but there's some things that I felt were factual that need to be corrected, okay? And I hope you take that step forward to work on those things, so like Mr. Meisner said, we don't come back again with the same situation we've had, because this is not the first time that we've had difficulties with that. We've supported you because we support the animals in this county that need to be taken care of. And we want them to be taken care of in the best possible way that it can be. That's the main thing, is we care, just like we care about our young kids in the schools and all that. We care about the animals that come to your shelter and the folks that have to bring them to their shelter and the folks that want to come and adopt them from your shelter. So please, I hope you take that into consideration wholeheartedly.
Anyone else?
He needs to get with Mr. Ryan and get this financial thing squared away. Or has that happened? Because I'd asked for a financial, and there's something wrong with those
Yeah,
numbers.
we'll get those cleaned up numbers over to you.
Any comments? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Hi,
Okay, thank you. Well,
thank you all for being here. I
Yes,
really
thank you.
appreciate
Thank you.
your input and your concern for Canyon City's animals.
all right. Did you mention there was another item there was no other item off the consent agenda that we were going to discuss at this time? Is that correct?
Yeah, we're good to move on.
All right.
Number 11.
Number 11.
10.
No,
Number
item
10.
10.
10.
3 more to go.
This, it says discussion on mine, but this is an introduction and first reading by title only of ordinance 19, series 2019, entitled, an ordinance of the City of Canyon City amending sections 3.12.020, and 3.12.050 of the Canyon City Municipal Code concerning out-of-state retailers doing business in Colorado. Would that be acting administrator, or would that be our city attorney that would like to address that this time?
The Wayfair Act, or this ordinance, is actually to put us in line with the state's, what the state has enacted as far as Wayfair. This is something that we discussed at a general government meeting not too long ago. This is the ordinance that goes along with that discussion.
Now, in that, there is a baseline, and I was at that meeting, I got to admit, there is a baseline that it kicks in. Was it the number of 100,000 kicks in there? Is that what we're saying here? Or
That's what the state uses.
That's the state uses.
At the statewide level to trigger the out-of-state retailer being subject to in-state tax.
Okay.
And so we would be following the state rules, so when that retailer hits that threshold, they would be subject to sales tax in Canyon City.
And that would kick in when the state sees that, we would then be alerted to that fact, do you think? Or how do we know that we should be the recipient of some tax dollars?
We are going to be following the state policy, and I believe, and I'm not sure how they are implementing it at the state
Okay,
level, but.
Okay. I know that it's new, and I just, you know, we would like to probably gain as much retail tax as we can.
Yeah, and this is those taxes that, again, are primarily on the internet, so
Sure.
we are reliant on the state
Yeah.
reporting it.
Okay, thank you, Corey. Mr. Meisner.
Yeah, you did, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say something too.
Okay.
Go ahead and take John.
What? We're in the comments section. We're not ready for a motion yet.
Well, that's what I
Are
wanted to
you?
confirm. And he wants
Is
to
that,
comment.
you want to make?
I want to make a comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Corey, can you share, you know, this is a pretty important subject, and it's going to have a lot of far-reaching consequences, both here for us in terms of what revenues we may see and in terms of out-of-state retailers. Can you share, not asking you to share any privileged information, but can you share what your general impression is of other cities, how this is going on? What's kind of the state of the discussion?
I can. This is very consistent with what other communities in Colorado are doing. I have an opinion as to why, and I think that opinion is that there is a desire more so than ever for uniformity among communities in Colorado on sales tax collection. Because the more uniformity there is in Colorado on this issue, the more certainty there is for retailers as to what the rules are, and I think that creates the level playing field. This decision changed sales tax law in the United States. My hunch is that similar things are going on in other states, but I know in Colorado uniformity is important because Colorado has a unique structure where home rule municipalities such as Canyon City have a lot more independence related to sales tax policy. Even with that independence, communities across the state are going with this uniformity so that there is this level of certainty with the business community.
Thank you, Corey. Ms. Smith.
I wanted a clarification too. We aren't initiating a new taxing in Canyon City. We're not saying we are tonight going to be taxing internet sales above 100,000 or 200 or 300 sales. We're just coming into uniformity with the state code.
That is correct.
Based on a Supreme Court ruling that was made.
Based on a Supreme Court rule, United States Supreme Court, so not Colorado Supreme Court, and based on the fact that it basically identifies what transactions are subject to tax. So not a new tax, but instead what sales are subject to Canyon City sales tax based on how much business the retailer is doing in Colorado.
Right, and that was from a U.S. Supreme Court decision that was made, and many of our smaller businesses in town have been a little worried that this applies to them, and unless they are racking in numbers like Wayfair and Amazon, they're probably not subject to that. Is that right?
Correct. If we have local businesses that are exporting significant amounts of goods to other states and creating the relationship with other states over a certain threshold, those businesses would be affected in those other states, but not here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. And Mr. Meisner?
Two questions. One, does this have any impact on intrastate internet sales? In other
Yes.
words, if I'm selling a product out of Canyon City via the internet to a resident in Colorado Springs, am I currently required to collect sales tax?
Yes, it's gonna, and it's, so there's a lot of factors. It's going to depend if it's a home rule municipality. It's gonna depend if the state collects it. It's gonna depend if it is in unincorporated versus incorporated areas. But those rules have always been there.
Right.
Those rules aren't being changed.
And then the other thing is, we've spent a lot of time talking about revenue. The other thing that this impacts is it takes the internet and the brick and mortar stores and puts them one step closer to being on the same playing field, because there historically has been that issue of trading the freight costs for sales tax versus what you're paying down on Main Street. And this takes us one step closer to that internet business having the same expenses, if you want to call it that, that brick and mortar shop does downtown.
But I just want to clarify that equality was based on the U.S. Supreme Court decision
That's what I was just gonna say.
and not
is-
Canyon City Council tonight.
Is what Councilmember Meisner was just referring to, was basically the policy, if you will, the judicial reasoning of the United States Supreme Court case and the Wayfarer case. It changed a United States Supreme Court case from many, many years ago, before the internet existed.
Right.
Well, there.
I think we're ready for a motion now.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
I'm not going to do it now.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Hamrick.
I move that we approve ordinance number 19, series of 2019, on first reading.
Second, Mr. Meisner. Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Would you call roll, please?
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Aye.
Okay, I found this to be the fun one, if you've read through it. Number 11, introduction and first reading by title only of Ordinance 20, Series 2019, entitled, An Ordinance of Canyon City, Colorado, Canyon City repealing and reenacting Section 9.56.025 of the Canyon City Municipal Code pertaining to throwing objects. And would the city administrator, acting administrator, would like to talk about that?
Yeah, the revision of ordinance 9.56.025 allows for the throwing of snowballs and water balloons. Back in 2003, when this ordinance was originally enacted, it made throwing snowballs and water balloons, common kid activities during the summer and wintertime, illegal. This is making it legal. There are still provisions in there to make it's still unlawful to throw these objects at bicyclists or motor vehicles and things like that. The intention is to allow kids to have fun.
And if there was ever a time I was gonna bring a prop to a meeting, it would have been tonight, but I
Yes,
didn't.
I was going to say that our Parks Department has squishy white snowballs, and tonight would be a really good night to have a snowball fight at the conclusion of this meeting, because I
Yes,
think I could really use that.
Well, I can no longer have fear that my son will have me arrested during a snowstorm. Okay. Any
Although
other-
the snow here
Go
is
ahead.
really terrible for making snowballs anyways. I mean, it's a rare
A
opportunity.
rare opportunity. Okay. Any other discussion on that? We know, would you call a roll? We have a,
We need a
somebody needs to make my motion. I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance number 20, series of 2019. This is first reading, is that correct?
This is first reading. Yeah.
And if I may add, I'm just awfully glad this ordinance wasn't in effect when I was growing up in a small town.
I'll second that motion.
Second, thank you. Any discussion on that motion?
I would just like to say that I am pro not making our children criminals and let the festivities begin.
Yes. Well, you have several boys that'll agree. So, all right, would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Hopkins?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Aye.
Okay, once again, this is first reading. This is introduction and first reading by title only of Ordinance 21, Series 2019, entitled An Ordinance of the City of Canyon City amending Section 3.12.170 of the Canyon City Municipal Code concerning filing sales tax returns and payment of sales tax. Mr. Stevens, would you like to handle that, or we should call Ms. Nordyke up?
Tammy has waited all night, so let's bring her up.
Bless your heart.
Does this mean Paychex will go out late this week? No, I'm just kidding. Tammy, would you talk to us about this?
So this ordinance is going to allow our local businesses to bring their sales tax returns in and make the payments. There has been concern that have been brought up to council about the local businesses having to file online and to pay for the fee for the e-checks. And this was how we felt we could address it. And we did have some discussion at the general government meeting the same night that we discussed the Wayfair. We thought this was a good compromise to just have it so they could come in and make those payments. We still require online, we still have the online filing, but local businesses can come in.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smith?
I did have a question. Why can they come in and do it personally and not put it in the mail?
If we allow it to be in the mail, basically we will allow all businesses, whether they're in Canyon City or California or New York, to mail them in. The idea of the online system was to try to eliminate all of the returns coming in. We're getting about 40 new licenses a month, and it relates to online retailers. So if we're getting, a lot more licenses, it means a lot more keying in the returns. So that's kind of why we did it that way, just so we eliminate as much data entry on our side as we can for the out-of-town retailers.
So I do want to say thank you for being so responsive. This was a topic we just recently brought up of concern, talking to local businesses, that it wasn't business-friendly to require them to pay that $1 fee online when they're here in town, and usually very small businesses. And thank you for being responsive. And I mentioned earlier that we are open for business, and we're also open to becoming more business-friendly. And this is one example of a policy that we're changing to be more friendly to the businesses based on their feedback, instead of just having it convenient for our Canyon City staff. So thank you for that. We are working towards being more business-friendly, and I look forward to continuing these conversations.
Thank you, Mr. Meisner.
Two questions. You mentioned that you're getting 40 plus a month. How many
Yes.
are you losing? We can't keep gaining 40 a month. Something's...
We have not been losing a lot of the, we have not been losing the local retailers. It's been the online that have increased our numbers every month. Because our code actually says that if they have one transaction within Canyon City, they're required to have a license.
Go ahead, Mr. Meisner.
The second thing is you mentioned, and I've asked this before, I think, and I don't remember the answer, but, so if John files his taxes online and pays online, and I bring mine in, relative to the efforts and actions of staff, what's the difference with that transaction that comes in through Denver, wherever it comes from, and my transaction?
If it's filed online, it goes straight into our income tax program, and the payment is applied to there. If they bring it in, then it is required that we enter that return, so it's more labor-intensive on the employee side, on staff side.
So his tax gets interfaced immediately, or when it's posted?
Yes.
Mr. Hopkins.
Yeah, I think the biggest complaint when I got this, I think what this helps is the little local guy who just wants to come in and do it the way they did it in the past. And when they changed it, it took them out of that picture, and now we're bringing them back into that picture. It's helping out the little local guy, and I'm appreciative of that part.
Me too.
Thank you, Frank. Any more discussion? Any questions of Tammy? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 21, series of 2019 upon first reading.
Thank you.
Second.
Second, Mr. Hammer, thank you. Any discussion on that motion?
Do we need 2 readings on an ordinance? Okay, fine, just clarifying.
Yeah. We do. Any more discussion on that motion?
That was a question.
That was a question. Would you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Hamrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Jaquez?
Aye.
Councilmember Meisner?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Aye.
Okay. Well, we're about ready to conclude unless someone has something, but I'd like to just make a comment thanking all of you. I know we probably ruffle each other's feathers, and you get concerned about the grumpy old mayor, but this is council. This is very open. We had nothing, we have no secret special side meetings whatsoever. This is it. This is what you heard. And all you want to come on council, this is what you're going to see. We all had probably 200 pages of things to read, which is very normal for council. That includes figures, numbers, plats, you name it. And all these people here, I just want to thank them from the bottom of my heart for doing their homework, getting here and getting it done. And thank you to Corey, thank you to Ryan, because this is a complicated job that we do, and the rest of us, we all here have another job to do during the day. So don't quit, keep going, but it is a lot of work, and I certainly do appreciate it. So,
And I'd like to add to that, that the person who makes it look all like it's just extraordinarily easy is Cindy.
yes, thank you. Yes, thank you, Cindy, so much. So, we're adjourned.